What's up, Internet? You're tuning in episode 127 of Nintendo Noise, Flip Screen Games' weekly Nintendo podcast. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined as always by my very good friend and co-host, Mr. Steven Radford.
Hello, hello.
Welcome back to the show, my guy.
Yeah, it's good to be back. And I missed a good episode last week with Sierra talking about MagFest, right?
Yeah, she got to talk about MagFest, and then we also got to talk about some Nintendo Direct rumors, which,
Ah,
it's worked out for you because that's what we're talking about again on this week's show. Because there's new rumors of more Nintendo Switch 2 rumors, more Nintendo Direct rumors. So I thought to keep things interesting, Steven, Sierra and I talked about it a little bit for the kids last week. I'm thinking you
hmm
and I, top half of the show, we get into the new rumors. Back half of the show, you and I, first exhibition match of the year for predictions. We throw down some predictions on, we'll assume there is a Nintendo Direct next week, right?
Okay.
We'll throw down what we think's going to happen, what we think won't happen, and we'll see if maybe we can get you your first W of the year. How's that sound?
I think I'm open to that. It's going to be a year
Yeah.
of W's for me this year, right? It's the year of Steven, so I'm perfectly happy to take that trophy. Does this contribute to whoever wins this? Do I get an
So
extra
here's the
point?
thing: the way I
Do I get
treat
a
it,
little cheeky bonus point towards
the
getting
way
that
I
trophy?
treat it, right, is I think it's the main thing. That's the show, right? If you you
Yeah.
if you want to win the trophy, you got to win the show. But in the meantime, you do the exhibition matches, right? It's like
hmm
just because we're not wrestling for the belt doesn't mean there's not a match, right?
Yeah.
So keep the skills sharp. And I think what we could do is, I wanted to do this for last year because we had a couple of those other events. I think we got to print new stuff, right? The Embassy Trophy, obviously our highest honor when it comes to predictions. I think we got to get a belt, for Flip Screen Mania. I think we got to
What?
get we could get a little exhibition thing, and if you win the exhibition match, you get like a medal of some kind.
Yeah.
I think we could work that out. It's in the budget.
I think maybe there should be something Nintendo themed specifically. Maybe it's like a picture of Mario's face or whatever.
Or it could be like the coin,
Yeah, like
and
a
we turn that
Nintendo noise. Oh, there's the seal of approval. I want that. I want like the
the
Nintendo seal of
Nintendo seal of
approval.
approval.
Yeah, you get the seal
That's
of
good.
approval if you win. Through like
That's good.
whoever wins the most predictions for the directs throughout the year gets the Nintendo seal of
Oh,
approval.
that would be cool. We could do it that way. You have exhibition matches all year and you keep tally
Yeah.
of who wins the Nintendo exhibition matches. I like that. I
hmm
like that a lot. Okay. All right. I'll talk to my trophy guy. All right. I gotta get my man Pep on the ringer.
I love that you've just got a trophy guy. Doesn't everyone have a trophy guy?
I love it because I didn't look for this. The guy who's my trophy guy is my bandmate's father-in-law. Good friend of
hmm
mine. I see him a lot, right? And it's like when I was talking about, oh, I'm doing a thing for my podcast. He's like, I I got a trophy guy. I'll be your trophy connect if you need me to. And he hooked me up with that for free. So
That's good. That is good.
we got
Yeah,
a trophy
it's what
guy.
everyone needs. Yeah.
Look, that's what you got to do in this life. If I impart any wisdom on this show, it's make friends. You know, that's what you got to
hmm
do. Know people. It's good. Anyway, let's get into it because we got some stuff to talk about here, Steven, because rumors have been circulating that there's going to be a Nintendo Direct sometime in the next couple weeks, right? Obviously, the last 3 years, I believe it was. They have
hmm
had a direct in February, right? The couple years prior to that, they had directs in March, late March. So getting one in that kind of Q2 window is certainly, something we've come to expect at this point. We had a
Well,
lot of
this would be
conversation.
Q1, right? So this would be like
Sorry, yeah,
streaming up,
Q1.
but it's also Q4 for them in terms of their financial year. So it's always been good for them to kind of wrap up the financial
Yeah,
year, get everything that they've got planned out before their end of the financial year, which I think is the end of March, beginning of April, so they
right.
can kind of plan ahead of what's going to be into the next financial year.
So it makes sense, right? That you would want to make big announcements in a quarter like that. Maybe you want to talk about new hardware. Last week, we talked a lot about the software side of it and what some of the big games and some of the big things they have revealed at events like this in the past have been, what we might see. Uh, the new batch of rumors this week are all about hardware, and they point to an event potentially taking place in March, which could lead
hmm
to like a bit of a 1-2 punch kind of thing. It's interesting, right? It's not unheard of that they would have multiple events in a short period of time. We've seen them do that plenty of times where they have a direct, and then they announce like a follow-up direct where they're going to focus on a specific game, or they're going to talk about, like have announced Pokemon Presents that way as well. So it's certainly not unheard of for that to be the case, but it would be a pretty crazy, Q1 for us, Q4 for them to announce, our new slate of hardware and a new slate of software. A lot swirling around here, and I think the way it takes shape could really play out a couple different ways. But let's talk about what we know. Let's talk about what the new information is, and then we can get into the speculating wildly about
Mhm.
what's going to happen. So the new batch of rumors, right, that we're going to talk about today, are coming from. They're not originally from, but they've been corroborated by the folks at Universo Nintendo, which is a Portuguese Nintendo website. They have come up on this show a few times because they have previously and correctly revealed details of previously unannounced Nintendo Directs, and their most recent uh, kind of big swing that ended up being right was when they correctly revealed the name of Sonic X Shadow Generations before the PlayStation State of Play that Ken and I covered a couple weeks back. So, you know, obviously, any leak, any rumor, you want to take with a grain of salt. But when you have somebody that has a track record for revealing this kind of information on multiple occasions, right now we can point to a clean track record of them either revealing stuff like this or corroborating other people's leaks.
Mhm.
And they've had a pretty strong, you know, um, consistency there. So I think with that in mind, I always tell you to take these with a grain of salt. This is one of those ones that you're probably a little bit safer taking some of it to the bank. Whether all of it comes to pass, right? Plans change, whatever. There's probably some fire here where we're seeing this smoke. So what they claim is that Switch 2 will not only have backwards compatibility with Switch titles, that it will also have an ability for developers to quote unquote enhance Switch games with the new console's additional processing power. So to
So
give you
presumably, like the PS4 Pro's boost mode.
or maybe something akin to what we've seen with like PlayStation's program of like you had this game on PS4, you can pay for an upgrade on PS5.
Okay.
Not to say that Nintendo is necessarily going to charge you, but it says here the fact that developers will have the ability to enhance makes me think that it's not necessary. And again, that this is a translation. This could totally be a language thing that doesn't actually mean anything. But if we're taking this word for word, to me it sounds more like it's an optional upgrade than it is like what you'd see on Xbox, where there's like smart delivery and all you need to do is put your game on, and there's
Well, it's
no
possible
effort
that
on the
is the
side of
case
development.
though, right? Like it could be like the Xbox side of things where because certain games can opt out of FPS boost or opt out of auto
Yeah.
HDR. So maybe it's a case that they go in and they check the box and say, yes, I want to be able to do this, or maybe I want to have like a smart delivery version of the
Mhm.
game, or they put out like a paid upgrade. I'm sure there'll be avenues for kind of developers to follow. I would hope though, that if it's a Nintendo title, like a first party Nintendo title, that they just give you those perks as
I
kind
really
of
hope it's a we just said it. What is it called for Xbox?
smart delivery.
Smart delivery, thank you. Yeah.
Mhm.
Not a lot of sleep last night. Um I hope it's a smart delivery thing. I think that would be I mean, obviously, nobody likes PlayStation's paid upgrade path. I think if it comes alongside new content, right? Like they did with Ghost of Tsushima, I think that is much easier to swallow if it was like, hey, you can upgrade Breath of the Wild and it's going to come with a new dungeon or like a new this or like something, right?
Mhm.
Like, then I think it's like, okay, fine, I'll pay for the upgrade. No sweat. If there's not new content, if it's just it runs better, it runs at 60 FPS, right? It's smoother, whatever. You want that to be a free upgrade. And I think when you think about the context of how Sony, or I'm sorry, not Sony, Nintendo, has talked about publicly about their concerns about um, easily transitioning that audience over and having folks that were on Switch pick up the Switch too, and not having that drop off, not having that communication marketing issue. I think being able to be like, hey, if you buy right. The new games are going to work on your Switch for a couple years, no problem. But if you upgrade to Switch 2, all of your old library is going to come over with you, and all of those games are going to get natural enhancements, just taking advantage of the console's increased power. That is a really good selling point. And we
Mhm.
know people care about backwards compatibility. I think when you have the added bonus of also all these old games feel new again, you can play Breath of the Wild at 60 FPS, you can play Tears of the Kingdom at 60 FPS, and you can have that upgraded experience right out the box. Even if there aren't a ton of new games that you're itching to play, that matters. Like we talked about that a lot with the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X, where like you and I both got those at launch. And it's like, I mean, yeah, like I beat Miles Morales and whatever, and like there's no other new games I want to play, but the all the games I was gonna be playing on my PS4 run a lot better, and there's no load times, and there's this and there's that. And like I think that is a big incentive for getting people to bite on something new of like, it's just a better experience. And you don't need to buy a bunch of new shit to appreciate that it's a better experience, right?
I think though that Nintendo is probably going to follow the same strategy of the Switch One and have some stellar games in that launch lineup.
I
So
think so. Yeah.
kind of the hand in hand of, I mean, we know that there's games coming out this year. Thousand Year Door remake is coming out. We've got that
Princess
Princess Peach
Peach.
game that we just mentioned. Two's coming out, so we know that they've got things in the pipeline. I'd imagine they'll have some bigger titles like maybe a 3D Mario, maybe Metroid, maybe maybe some new IP for the first time
And last week we
in
were
a
talking
while.
about there's rumors about Donkey Kong, right? Because it's the I
Hmm.
think 30th anniversary of Donkey Kong
Well,
Country is
yeah,
this
it's also
year.
the 35th anniversary of Mother, so maybe they do
Right.
like an Earthbound
And
remake.
like we know that they have that team that's supposed to be working on new Donkey Kong stuff. Like that's been the Tropical Freeze is having its 10-year anniversary, so there hasn't been like a new one in a long time. We know Metroid Prime 2 is something that we've been talking about. Like there's a lot of stuff that, you know, they could easily
Hmm.
announce in the next week. And you'd have a really good roadmap of what the rest of this year looks like. And if all those games are like, hey, like they're on Switch and also they run better on the new console. And then maybe there's like one exclusive or two exclusives, and maybe that is like the 3D Mario or something like that, where it's like, hey, this isn't
I hope
cross.
there's no exclusives. I really do hope there's no exclusives. Like, it'd be so hard to leave behind that install base.
Yeah, but I
Hundreds
mean,
of
you have to
millions.
do it at some point, right?
You
And
do at
it's
some
like,
point, but even PlayStation struggled at launch with like, because and they're traditionally like generations. We dropped the previous one, we're in the new one. They did the kind of overlap. I think we'll probably see the same thing for a couple of
I feel
years
like
before they kind of
usually
phase it out.
with those consoles, right, you see first party stuff goes exclusive and like third party stuff stays cross generational for a couple years, right? Obviously we bucked that trend a little bit this time around. And I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case, but I also wonder because it's like, okay, say there's a new 3D Mario. Has that game been in development since Super Mario Odyssey came out? And then as a
Probably, yeah.
result, it runs fine as a Switch game and there's no problem with it being a Switch game? Or like, are we at the point where it's like, yeah, Tears of the Kingdom is kind of the pinnacle of what we're able to do on this hardware, and anything new that we do is going to be limited, right? Like it's I don't know.
But I
Like
think that's
I don't
fine.
know
I
how
think
many
it's
big
fine.
games, how many years worth of big games you can get that will still play on Switch well.
Yeah, I can agree with that, but I do think they've done a good job of scaling it. So like if it runs at a lower resolution or lower
Sure.
frame rate,
I
if
think for
say
a
it
lot
runs
of
at
their games, that'll be super easy, right? Like the Luigi's Mansions, the Peach game, like those games that you're talking about. I think that'll be no problem. I'm thinking more about the marquee shit, like a Mario Kart 9, a new 3D Mario, stuff like that is like, where's the line on that? Is that at launch there's one or two games like that? Is that a year in there's one or two games like that? Are they really going to try and keep it cross gen for multiple years? Because if that's the case, yeah, you're not, you're not leaving money on the table for that old install base, but also like you're not incentivizing people to upgrade. And like that's the
depends how
thing that
long they keep the Switch around though, because I
yeah.
don't think that's gonna go. I think the probably the original Switch will go. We'll just have the OLED model and the Switch Lite while they kind of try and clear out the stock.
But I mean,
But at
even
some
so, how
point,
long is that? 2 years, 3 years? Like think
I
about how
think
long the
probably,
3DS stuck
yeah.
around, right? It was two
I
years, right?
I
I
think
think it was
probably 2 I think it's probably 2 years, and I could see maybe something like a Mario Kart 9 coming out. I think it was rumored for, like, holiday 2025 when we spoke about it. I could see that maybe being the first Switch 2
yeah.
exclusive title because we know that that sells consoles. It is a game that people wanna play, and a new Mario Kart probably would drive people to buy, buy a Switch in the same way that a new Animal Crossing would, or maybe a new Zelda would. Those are the
Yeah.
kind of titles that get people to kind of transition over. Whereas I think some of the titles that we kind of think about, like maybe like a Metroid Prime, for example, I think those are the people who are really kind of ingrained in Nintendo already that really buy those games, and it's not really been traditionally a game that sells consoles. Maybe that trend has shifted with Metroid Dread, but you kind of look at the sales figures, it's nowhere near something like a Smash or an Animal Crossing or a
No,
Mario
it never
Kart.
has been, right? And that's the thing that's interesting too, though, right? It's like we were just talking about that in the Discord this week. Doc shared something where it was like Furukawa was saying how they think of Pikmin as a marquee IP now, that it kind of broke into that new echelon.
Mhm.
I think you're right that Metroid is probably approaching that, and that they want to see Metroid Prime 4 be that kind of moment for it. Um, and yeah, you get into this weird place of like, okay, so do the way that we do that is you release it on both SKUs and it has a bigger install base, or is it that you try to make it the premium thing that it's like, if you want to see the next fucking generation of Nintendo games, like you got to get the new console and you got to get Metroid Prime. Like that's the moment. That's the game of the moment. In the way that Breath of the Wild was the game of the moment and you were like, fuck yeah, I'm going to get a Switch, right? Like
I think though there is a case that you could just say it plays the best here, and you're probably going to want to play it there. In the same way that Metroid
yeah.
Dread was that with the Switch OLED, it was like it's got all these dark, gorgeous environments. The colors
It's
really
so
pop off the
different though
screen.
to be it be like a half gen refresh, a
Hmm.
new model, because that was like a thing with like Spider-Man, right? Like I remember, it plays better on PS4 Pro. And it's like, yeah, of course it does, but it looks great on the regular one. Is that gonna be the case with this? Because like what we're talking about, what we know or what we think we know about Switch 2 and its architecture, it's a lot more powerful, and with upscaling and everything, it's capable. And again, if all that is real, it's capable of a level of work that the base unit I think is going to really struggle to keep up with. And it's like, well, what is that? What does that look like then? Right?
Hmm.
I don't know.
It's tough, and like if these are choices for the developers to make, that it depends how granular that is. Can the developer choose to focus on graphical fidelity versus frame rate, or is it a checkbox like a boost mode that basically is just like, okay, we'll double the frame rate to 60 FPS, and that's that? Is it like a resolution based thing, like you can target 4K if you want to? We don't really know. We don't have any of those details, but it's nice to know that that kind of thought process is there and that we are seemingly going to get that backwards compatibility, because we've not traditionally had that from console to console previously. Yeah, we had it from, I guess we
We
have
have
since
with
the
our
GameCube
handheld,
era. We have from the
weirdly.
since the GameCube era though, GameCube to Wii U, they've all
Yeah.
been kind of compatible.
At
The
least one
digital stuff,
generation back, right?
yeah,
Like,
and the digital stuff, no. But it seems like that is going to be the case this time around. That it's going to be for physical and digital, so that your digital library will kind of follow you along.
I think it has
Um,
to at this point, right? Like I think they have gotten away with that for as long as they can.
they'd have immunity on their hands, I think, if it's like
Yeah.
stuck on this generation hardware.
I mean, it would really disincentivize you from buying things there, right? Like, it's like, to me, it's like, all right, I'm not going to buy indie games there anymore. I'm not going to buy anything that I would want. It's like, that's all on
Yeah,
Steam Deck
it's a
now, right? Like,
similar conversation we had about the Xbox stuff on Flip Screen Games podcast last week, where it was
mhm.
like, if the console goes away, why would I buy anything here? Because it means the next generation is stuck and I can't play anything.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's an interesting one. So, to give a little bit more context of just kind of what we think is supposed to happen, right? I'll give you this context as well, just in case you're interested. This report originally came from a Portuguese podcast called X do Control. I don't speak Portuguese, so I apologize. That was probably just
Probably
atrocious.
Controle.
Controle X do Controle
Yeah, I think it's probably
do
that.
do yeah do X do. I don't know. Somebody Portuguese correct me. I would like to know. I'm not. This isn't willful ignorance. I've never engaged with Portuguese as a language, so I apologize. Um, but it was originally getting shared by Centro Leaks, another well-known leaker. Um, and then we've seen corroboration since then, right? Of other people saying they've heard this is true, that this is what's supposed to be happening. Claims that we will get a direct next week, that we will learn about the console sometime in March, and that we would also get a Pokemon Presents presentation later this month as well. So that'll be 3 major presentations coming from them in the next, you know, let's say 4 to 6 weeks, right? And
I
I
guess the
think
Pokemon one is that could be from Pokemon rather than from
sure,
Nintendo, right? Like it
but
because it might not be focused on gaming
correct.
necessarily.
Correct. Yeah, because it's like they've had Pokemon Presents where it's like, oh, we're talking about some of our mobile games or, Pokemon Concierge or like stuff like that. Like, sure. But you think about it and it's like, I mean, it's not unheard of for it to be time to think about another Pokemon game, right?
No,
We've
it
heard a lot
definitely
of
is. We didn't get one last year, so it's
we
like
didn't get
this
one last
time.
year, and we've heard that and again, rumor, grain of salt, who knows? I've heard that the Pokemon Company was dissatisfied with the reaction to Sword and Shield, not Sword and Shield, excuse me, Scarlet and Violet, and that the technical issues and everything that it experienced, the rocky launch, that it has taken them, that it's kind of given them a shot in the arm to be like, we need to reevaluate timelines and making sure that these games are coming out in a solid state and blah blah blah. Um,
Mhm.
Not to mention, right? We know that they're looking at quote unquote Pal World. Who knows whether that's something that's going to influence their decision making at all. But we had a rumor that I think is probably fake, right? But that was making the rounds on our Discord this week about a possibility of them doing a new set of Let's Go games. And
I would love that. They should do that because 'cause they're the best.
I think they should. I agree. I don't think they're the best, but I think they should do another one. I feel like something like that makes a ton of sense to me. The idea that maybe we'd get a Pokemon Presents and it's not the next generation yet, but it is like an announcement of a Let's Go type game, an announcement of maybe a Gen 5 remake. That's the next one up. Black and White are the next one in line to get remade. We just had Gen 4 like 2 years ago. You
When
know,
it's not gonna be a Game Freak game, we'll get someone else to do it,
hey, if
like,
creatures do it, or like that's who did it last time, right? Or it was another smaller studio.
wasn't it
So I think
Timmy?
you
Something like that?
yeah, they were a third party one. I think Creatures made the Let's Go games. But if you think about it that way, right? Say Game Freak is working on the next generation, they're going to take a longer development cycle, hopefully, and you get an announcement of a remake or a Let's Go, and then whatever one we didn't get announced gets announced maybe the following year, and it's, maybe it's 2 years, 3 years into this next console when we get the first Pokemon game on Switch 2, and hopefully that is kind of their big swing and like, oh, okay, this one we worked longer on, we worked harder on it. It is a bigger, meatier type
I
title.
hope so,
A
yeah.
man
Like,
can dream, right?
I mean, it wasn't it probably can't have been nice for kind of Nintendo to see the kind of lack of quality that happened in that last Pokemon game.
Especially when it's like it's still selling really well, but it's like
Mhm.
you're getting all this bad press. It's like, you don't want that, right? Like Pokemon, Nintendo, it should be synonymous with quality.
Yeah, that's seller quality that they don't do anymore. But, I could see a new Pokemon this year being a console seller, though. Like, imagine if the next Pokemon is exclusive to Switch 2. That 100% is gonna get
Yeah.
people to buy another console.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if it's not, I think it'll motivate people to buy a new console. Like Pokemon is a system seller, no question. And I think, yeah, it's like I hope they don't have one ready. I'm totally down if they want to announce a new one and it's like it's 2025, like it's farther out, like whatever, maybe. But it's like, man, I, I know I've said this so many times. We don't need to get down the rabbit hole again, but I would just love to see them learn from Scarlet and Violet and be like, let's take a step back.
And
Let's put
Arceus.
that game was so fucking good. It was so good. I would love for them to announce another one of those, frankly. But yeah, it's like learn from that where it's like just take your time. Like it doesn't need like I would rather you make a game that is so good that it sells forever, like Mario Kart, right? Rather than oh, we'll make 2 or 3 or 4 of them a gener It's like, dude, like
So they're just gonna make a game called Pokemon. It's gonna be like Power World, and they're just gonna it's live service, keep adding to it forever and ever.
I mean, that's not what I want for like the mainline series, but I would love for them to experiment with something like that as a side game just to like I don't know, just to show that they're thinking about it, right? That there's like some level of like experimentation. Let's try something else. Like that was what was so refreshing about Arceus to so many of us was that like it's different, right? Like it's
Mhm.
it's fundamentally different in a way that feels fresh and not so new and fundamentally different that it's alienating or that it's not familiar, but that it's just like, hey, like the flow's a little bit different. The moment to moment's a little bit different. Your goals are a little bit different. Like the story of unfolds in a different way. And like, I would love to see them just double down on some of those ideas, you know? And I
No,
think you're right, though. Like a game that they push as like, this is the Pokemon game you've been waiting for. That would be a massive fucking system seller. And it would be a thing that would push people over the edge to upgrade for sure. So you hope that's what they've got cooking.
yeah.
That like,
Yeah, it'd be nice. But I could also see this year what they have cooking is that little smaller third party remake game that they then brand up a bunch of special edition consoles to sell out the old hardware, like they did with the 2DS XL. We had like a million
yeah.
special editions, and just kind of get them all out. And I would
Actually, to
imagine that
your
with
point, they
every
did that.
single game now, we're probably going to get that now with a special edition.
They also did that with Sun and Moon, right? Like came out, I think. Is that right? I
Yeah,
think
and you
that's
had
right.
the new 3DS XL.
Yeah, and they did like a kind of like, okay, well, this is like the last Pokemon game on 3DS, and it's gonna be a big put. Like, yeah, it could be. It could be that you get maybe a more like minor Pokemon game this year, and it is like the okay, great, like buy the special edition. Like, let's have our
Hmm.
last big, holiday season for the Switch and leverage a Pokemon game to do it. That makes a ton of sense to me. Um, hmm, could be onto something there, Steve. You could be onto
Maybe
something.
they'd finally do a different bundle other than the Mario Kart one for Black Friday.
They do though. They usually have a second one. It's just they also do Mario Kart because
Yeah, every
motherfuckers
single
will
year.
buy it.
It's like, "Oh, you still don't have Mario Kart? Okay, here you go. You must be the
And
one person on the planet that
new
didn't buy
people
it."
buy a Switch every day, bud. You know, crazy. It's absolutely crazy, man. But man, that's got to be the most profitable piece of software like ever made, right? Like,
Oh, yeah, big time, yeah, yeah.
no support for it for like 10 years, and they're like, yeah, we'll put out some DLC, sure.
And then the DLC is like, "Oh, well, we already did these tracks for a mobile game anyway, so we can just kind
Just
of
re-release
bring
them.
them over anyway. We'll just
Fuck 'em.
re-release them
It's
and
so good,
charge you money for them." Yeah.
very good. Yeah, they got to be happy about that.
Mhm.
So I am I don't know. This is such a tough one because these kinds of rumors, like I feel like there's enough here that I'm like, I kind of do think that they're real. I kind of think some level of this is true. And
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think we're ready for it, aren't we? And like the rumors have all been kind of leading up to this over the last year. It's been like there's going to be a new Switch. There's been kind of shown behind closed doors. Then there's like the rumor that it's going to be releasing in the back half of 2024, but they'd like to bring it up sooner if they can. That they've got made all of these units so that they're not going to have to kind of have that kind of stagnant period that the PS5 struggled with, where people just couldn't buy them. So
yeah.
and like we've heard that it's going to have an 8-inch LCD
I mean, even
screen
even the Switch
from
dealt
the
with that, right?
supply
Like
chain.
there was that point when the Switch came out and it's like you couldn't get one.
Yeah, yeah, I was on Reddit every day, like, "Oh, they're in stock here. Everyone go check it out."
I remember like there was a point where me and like all my buddies that were gamers, right? Like I got one on launch day and everybody played it at my house and was like, "Oh, I got to get one." And then everybody I knew was in a text chain and it would be like, "Oh, there's some at Target. I went to Target. I got one." Like, go to Target.
Mhm.
It's very funny. But yeah, you got to imagine they want to avoid that and they want to get us. Hold on one second. My cat is being an asshole. Yeah. Oh,
It's gonna go fishing, I think.
fucking psychopath. Sorry about that for the audio, folks. If you're on YouTube, you got to show. Uh, yeah, I think given the fact that they have that specific stated goal of like, we don't want there to be an issue getting people to transition, like, I imagine that really wanting to make sure that there isn't a supply chain issue, that there isn't an issue where anybody that wants one can't get one.
Mhm.
Is just a problem they don't want to run into because, like, usually Nintendo's all about that artificial scarcity. But I think in this scenario, they want the opposite. They want it to be like, yeah, you got one day one if you want one, like because they're concerned about us adopting it. And I think this is a great way um to kind of make sure that that goes the way you want it to. Right? Is like, okay, great. Like have as many units as we can get on shelves so that we don't have them sitting. but that anybody that wants one gets one, and then they can go evangelize it and talk about why you need to upgrade and
Yeah, that's
why.
why the Switch sold. That it was, oh, I don't know if I want one because the Wii U was a bit of a disaster. Does Nintendo still have it? And it went to anyone that tried one, anyone that saw one was just like, oh shit, yeah, there's some really great games here. Like it actually does what it's kind of what they promise. You can
And I
plug it
mean,
in the TV, it's instant. You can take it out. You're playing on the go.
and like again, right? Like there's the whole thing of like Nintendo hadn't. I mean, like Wii U aside, right? Like the Wii U was obviously a misstep in its design and execution, but I think there's also kind of an era from late in the Wii's life cycle through the Wii U's life cycle where it's like they were not making games that were getting like mass market attention. And I think part of that is that the Wii U was bad and people weren't playing it. But like I think there was kind of that attitude of like, like Nintendo makes these great games, but they're so niche and blah blah blah. And it's like Breath of the Wild, I think it's easy to forget now because of how strong this generation has been for Nintendo. But like Breath of the Wild was their first like legit game of the year contender that was going toe to toe with the other big dogs in a while. Right? Like there had been that whole like, yeah, the family category. That's where Nintendo gets their consolation prize, right? And it's like
Mm.
now, right? Like the year the Switch came out, they had 2 game of the year contenders. This year they had a game of the year contender, right? Like they've had one several times over the course of this console's life cycle. And I think that like that was a big differentiator. And you got to imagine that they see that on some level in terms of like, and it's a tough problem because you don't want to alienate your existing base. You don't want to make a game that's a great game underperform. And also, it is that Breath of the Wild like type killer moment that makes a console happen. And I think it's weird now to be in this position of like, okay, you know what this is, you're already part of it, it's already a moment. How do we keep that momentum going? And it's not an easy problem. I think with the Switch, it was easy to have that like scorched earth, like the Wii U's dead, this is the future. And like that's clearly not what they want to do because the Switch has been a golden goose and you don't want to kill it before it's done making money. And it's not done making money. So it's like, how do you? That's a tough
Gotta keep
marketing
gotta
problem.
keep that branding. The branding's the issue, the marketing's the problem. I mean, we spoke about this, like, PlayStation got it right. I think they're the only ones that ever did get it right. But I could see Nintendo kind of making a misstep here if they're not careful. They don't make it clear that this is
Happened
kind of a
before.
generational leap, and people maybe mistake it for, yeah, it's another updated model like the OLED model. I don't really need it. I only bought one last year. I bought the OLED
Or
model.
like,
I'm not really interested.
or again, like trying to speak to that Switch audience too much, and then you're limiting what the new hardware can be. And then everyone's like, well, why would I upgrade if everything is being made with the Switch in mind? It's like, that's a realistic problem, right? And it's like that happened with the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox. And like, granted, it didn't really impact their sales. They're selling great. Even Xbox in third place, selling really good. I think there is that tough thing of like, okay, like what is perception versus reality, right? Like it's like what like are diehard gamers talking on Twitter about how there's no games going to impact the perception of the Switch 2? Really? Probably not. But those are also the diehard motherfuckers that you're guaranteed are going to buy it day one and upgrade. And there needs to be experiences there for them that are meaningful and exclusive. And I think if that is just quality of life changes, that can be okay, but those better be real big quality of life changes like we talked about on the PS5 and the Series X, where it's like, okay, yeah, like I'm playing Persona 5 on this thing, but like my load times went from 2 minutes to less than 30 seconds.
And the load times have never been that bad on the Switch. I don't really know
No.
what
So it's
kind
like,
of
what do you
improvements to
improve?
do. It's gotta be some kind of boost mode with the frame rate boost, with resolution boost, with that. It's just
Is that
the
enough
games just
though?
have to play
I don't
back.
know.
It would be enough for me. It'd be enough for me to, like, entertain going back to a bunch of games and being like, "Oh, shit, I can play
Yeah.
Tears of the Kingdom, and it's a solid 60 FPS now, and I don't really have to worry about any of those frame rate dips that are kind of
Yeah.
frequent in that game."
I think you're probably right. I do think you still need a big swing though. I think you need a Mario or a Metroid Prime or something. And maybe it doesn't need to be exclusive, but it needs to be like the Wii U to Switch
Yeah. Yeah.
thing with Breath of the Wild where it's like, yeah, but the Switch 2 version is so
But what if
definitively
it's
the
not
one
a
you want to
first
play.
person? What if it's not first person swing? What if it's third person? What if it's like we've got GTA 6 coming, or
Third
we've got,
party, you mean?
yeah, yes.
Yeah.
What if we got something like that, or oh, here's Call of Duty running. We know it's coming. This is what it looks like now.
I mean, like, I don't know. Like, I guess that matters. It's just so tough to me because it's like I'm a multi-platform guy. So it's like to me that kind of thing is like, yeah, it's cool or whatever, but it's like I don't care. I'm not playing
There's no
GTA
other
5.
handheld though, Pete. Like there's the Steam Deck, but it's kind of more niche. There's no other handheld. If you can put something in front of people and be like, you can play GTA and it's
This,
in your
but on the
hands.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that is appealing to
You're
people.
not wrong. You're not wrong. And I guess it's just like how many of those little things do you have before it's like, okay, this is worth it, you know?
Yeah, but I remember seeing Skyrim in that first trailer and thinking,
That was
"Holy
a
shit."
big deal. That was a
Yeah.
big deal, no doubt. Yeah, I think part of the benefit of that too, though, was like there was an element of that was a cool announcement, but it also felt like it was a bigger deal because it was like, oh, this is showing Nintendo serious about third parties. They're serious about working with Western developers. They're serious about putting
Mhm.
mature games on the platform. I don't know that that same announcement means as much to the Switch 2 audience because we've already had that expectation set for us. And
But there are certain games that we're not getting, right? Like, there's
yeah,
that rumor, do you remember that Far Cry, I think it was Far Cry 7 was gonna be a launch title with the Switch 2?
yeah,
Um, we've obviously not had a Far Cry title come to Switch previously. Ubisoft bring select specific games that they've usually created specifically for the Switch, or games that fit on the Switch that also run on other platforms, like the new Prince of Persia game, or in the case of Mario Rabbids. I think having titles that are multi-platform and have been kind of restricted to only Xbox and PlayStation players can play these games, and now it kind of opens up because the console's a lot more powerful. I think
yeah.
that will entice people to kind of come over, and then there's no risk of Nintendo having to leave their first party games just on the new Switch. They can also kind of do the cross-platform without having to really worry about it.
Yeah, I think there's something there, right? Like we talked a couple of weeks ago about that rumor that they are trying to find more third-party partners and fill up their calendar and everything because it's taking more time and money and resources to develop high quality single player games. So like fair enough. I think you're probably right on that. It's going to be an interesting couple of weeks. I'm very interested to see like do we get a direct next week? If so, what is the content there? And do they even mention hardware? Is it going to be like a hey, we're going to do a hardware event next week or next month thing like they did with the Switch? I'm just so ready for what comes next at this point, right? Like I love the Nintendo Switch. I think it is Nintendo's easily their best console. It has such a good library. It's such a good ecosystem to be part of. And it's like we're all so clearly ready to see what comes next. And I just really want it to be good. I really want to see them
Mhm.
come out and have something that I'm like, oh shit, in the same way I was with the Switch and not have reservations, not worry that they're going to fumble the bag, right? Because it's like, man, we've just seen them make that mistake so many times in the past. And I feel like they're poised to not make it, but it's big if.
Mhm.
All right, let's get into these predictions, Steve. But before we do that, I'm going to remind you that this episode of Nintendo Noise is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of February. They are, of course, Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valence, Earth Visitor, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, aka Asobi, Snackago, Steve Stompy, Susan Likes Cats and Also Boobies, Ty the Dude, and Wakahula. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. You all the realest of the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. Thank you oh so much for tuning into this week's show. Remember, if you want to get involved just like they did, you want to check out some of our sister shows, you want to write into the show for the question block segment, or just any of the other ways you can get involved in all the cool stuff we're doing here at Flip Screen Games, head over to our website. That's flipscreen.games, where you will find all the places we are all over the web and all the ways that you can get involved in the community or show your support. However you choose to do so, we thank you for tuning in to another episode of Nintendo Noise. Okay, so if this is your first predictions with us, first of all, I'm going to say go listen to our 2024 predictions episode that we did this year on the Flip Screen Games podcast. Steve, if you want to pull up the number for that right now, that would be
Yeah,
great.
I'll find out. Find out.
Go check that one out. It's a great time. Steve and I have been doing it since the beginning of Flip Screen Games or longer.
Since the dawn
Um,
of time.
yeah, since forever. And Max has gotten in on it the last 2 years. Of course,
Episode
your boy,
122 is the episode
122.
you wanna go watch?
And of course, your boy, I'm a 3-time champion. We got to update the trophy for 2023, but I'm an unstoppable juggernaut when it comes to these predictions. Steve has said that this is his year. This is the year of
Mm.
Steve. He wants to get some W's up on the board. He wants to, show the audience that he's a contender. So I think, today we're gonna do our first exhibition match, right? Not one of the main events. This one's just for honor, just for glory, and we'll see where we get from here. But we're gonna be following the same rules that we did for the 2024 predictions. So if you have not checked out that episode, or if you need a refresher, we're gonna do a truncated version. Usually we do 10. This week we're gonna do 5 each, as well as one risky pick. But otherwise, the rules are the same. So we'll each have 6 predictions, 5 of which will be worth 1 point. We'll each have one risky pick, which is supposed to be a kind of crazy thing that shouldn't happen, but could happen. If you get that right, that's worth double points. So you'll get 2 points on that. We are going to have partial points again this year. So the way that works is if you hedge your prediction and it has an and/or statement, you have to get both parts of it right to get a full point. Or if one part of it's right, you'll get a half point. So you have a little bit of risk reward there in terms of, if you want to hedge your bets, you can, but you're potentially limiting your overall score the more specific you get, right? Because it needs to
Yeah.
be exactly right for that to be the case. So then the other thing that we kind of have is that everything needs to be a solidly observable prediction, right? It can't be like something that's based on vibes, right? Like Nintendo will have a good year is not a good prediction, right? You could say, if we were doing predictions for the year, you could be like Nintendo will outperform their Q4 sales from last year. That's something that we can look at with numbers and say it happened or it didn't happen. Or like, I think this video game will come out, right? Like I predicted last year that there wouldn't be a 2D Mario game, and there was. So I didn't get those points, right? It's got to be like that. So, Steve, are you ready?
I think so, yes.
I'm going to give you the first prediction because
Oh,
I
thank you.
am a gentleman. So you can go first.
Okay, I think Hi-Fi Rush is going to be announced for Nintendo Switch.
Bold prediction. I dig it. It's a
So
good
we
one.
know, yeah, we know that Xbox has their kind of business alignment podcast thing that they're doing on
This week.
Thursday. Rumor is that the Nintendo Direct's also on that day, so I could see that Hi-Fi Rush is there. We've seen some data mines in there. That there's T-shirts that are themed based on the Nintendo Switch. So I think it's pretty much just kind of a shoe-in for me.
Okay.
It's whether it gets announced here and whether Nintendo wants to include it in a direct, or whether they kind of just release it and Xbox does that on the Xbox podcast.
I think it's a good one. I think it will show up at a direct. I think if it hadn't leaked, it definitely would have been revealed at a direct. They've done that
Mhm.
before, right? Like that was like where we got the reveal of like Cuphead and stuff like that. Ori coming was at directs, not at Xbox events. So makes sense to me. I'm gonna say my number one is I think Nintendo Switch 2 is just what we'll call it, right? The successor to the Nintendo Switch
Mhm.
is not revealed during the next Nintendo Direct.
Okay. I think that's
I, I'm
probably pretty
I'm
clear.
buying in.
One.
I think there
Mm.
will be a separate hardware event. They may mention it. They may say, "Hey, we have a hardware event coming up where we will talk about the successor to Nintendo Switch," but I don't believe that they'll show it. I don't believe that if anything, it's a mention, it's not a reveal.
Okay. So I think for my second prediction that there's going to be a solid release date for Princess Peach announced. I
Do
think
we
it's
not
about time.
do we not
It's
have a
been
release date on that?
No, it's been summer 2024. I think we're going to get a definitive date of it's going to come out on this day.
That's so crazy. I 100% thought that had a release date with its last trailer.
I'll check, but I don't think
Double
so.
check just to make sure. I don't want you to lose points for no reason.
Uh, no, you're right. It does. Okay, so I will pick a different one then. It's coming out 22nd of March.
Okay. I was gonna say
Uh,
I thought it got a date on its last
mhm.
trailer.
We'll do Paper Mario Thousand Year Door release date then,
Okay.
because that
I
one
like that.
does not.
I think that's a good one. Hmm. Okay. I'll lock down Luigi's Mansion 2 release date. I think that'll get
Okay.
one. Get through the easy ones, right?
Mhm.
I think that's, same thing. It's been announced for a while. We haven't heard about it. you know, probably a good opportunity to talk about it again and say, "Hey, it's coming out in October."
Yeah. I think we're gonna get information about the new Mario Park in Florida. Um,
That's a good
it's
shout.
under construction. We kind
Comes
of
out next year, right?
yeah.
2025 is when they're gonna break ground. Or no,
So I
it'll open in 2025.
so
They broke
I
ground
I
already.
think they'll kind of want to update people on it and kind of get people excited, stuff like that. People might want to book for a holiday next year, that kind of thing.
It's a good idea. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Okay. Um, I'm gonna say I'm gonna say that we get a new Donkey Kong Country game.
Okay.
Yeah.
Specifically country.
And it could be revealed, but um I think I should get partial points if a new Donkey Kong game is revealed and it's not country. Throwing that out there.
What if it's like a remake? Does that count? Is that another partial point?
I think it
Like
depends on how much
like
of like
it's a one for one remake of the original Donkey Kong Country,
I
and it's
think that
just
counts
called
as a new game.
Donkey Kong Country Remake.
Yeah, I think that counts then.
What if it's a remaster, Tropical Freeze remaster
Then
or something?
no, that doesn't count then.
Okay.
Or partial points maybe because it is,
Okay.
you know what I mean? Like it gets so weird with that kind of thing. I feel like we take that on a case by case because it's like if Max had said a new Metroid game will be released and Metroid Prime Remastered come out, it's like it's a new Metroid game, right? Like it literally is. Just because it's a remake, it has a new name, there's new content, it's a new SKU. It's not, it's not like
Mhm.
it's not like if they were to port like you talked about earlier, right? Like if they were like, "Hey, GTA 5 is coming to Nintendo Switch."
Yeah.
That's not a new game, right? That's a port. But I think a re-release of a game with new content or whatever, that does count as a re-release, right? Like the Mass Effect remastered trilogy, right? Like that's a new release. Just because it's old games, like it's like you still did something. The Last of Us Part 1, that's a new game, right? Even though it's a re-release.
To some extent, but like is Metroid Prime Remastered a new game?
I think it is in the context of you saying that they're going to release a game, right? I
Mhm.
think it gets different when you're talking about like, is this a 2024 game or not or whatever, right? Like there's nuance to the conversation, but broadly, if this wasn't my prediction, right? If it was yours and they were like, they're doing I'd be like, I'd give it to you. That's a new game, right? Like it's not, it's not like it's coming to NSO or something, right? Like
Mhm.
they made a
Okay.
new team, they worked on it. That to me, it's a little different. I don't know. All right, what's your next one?
I think Sega is gonna reveal a new game. Now, I don't know if you think this is too ridiculous, like too wide.
What do you mean by new game?
So like a Jet Set Radio or a new Bayonetta game
And
that's
it's going
from
to be
them.
revealed for the first time at the Nintendo
Yes.
Direct is your
Yeah.
prediction?
Yeah.
I think that's fine. I think the thing you have to be okay with there though is that if it's at all like if they're like Sonic X Shadow is coming to the new Nintendo, like that doesn't count because it was
I think that's
revealed
gonna be
at
half a point. That's half a point. If you're getting half a point for a potential
no 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 no
remake
no
of Donkey
because
Kong.
you're saying they will reveal a new game. That is revealing a game is showing it for the first time. Showing it again at a second event is not a reveal.
Okay, what if we see what if it's in like that, that remember that little sizzle reel they did at the Game Awards? Where it's like they had like, "We're working on these 10 games," and it's
Yeah.
one of those. Because
If you
'cause we've never really seen them, they're just like, "We're working on this, 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 and this."
So you're saying they'll show one of those games for the first time?
Yeah. Should I change it to rather than reveal, we'll show a new game for the first time? I was thinking Jet Set Radio because it
Yeah.
feels like that's gonna come to Switch, and it feels like a Switch game.
Yeah.
The other thing, the other Sega
How
related
about
one
you
I
say
had
this?
was
How about
that
you
they'll
could
bring Yakuza for the first time.
that's interesting. I think you could do that. That one's fine to me. I think what you could do is you could say Sega will show like footage of a game for the first time. Like that to
Okay,
me is
okay,
like, okay, like, yeah, they
okay.
told us there
Sega
was
will
a
show.
new crazy taxi, but we haven't seen anything. So if they showed that, that would be new.
Footage of a game for the first time. Okay, that's fine. We'll be able to judge it.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like I'm not, I think I'm pretty fair with the points. I
Mhm.
don't. Okay, so I got two more. Hmm. Okay, I'm gonna say my next one is. Uh, fuck. Okay, sorry. I'm like really. There's a couple here, and I'm really not super confident on which one I should go with. I'll say this: Metroid Prime 2 Remastered reveal.
Metroid Prime 2 Remastered.
Yeah,
If it's part of a collection.
I don't know.
Okay.
I
Because
think
they were
it's
like, the rumor was that one wasn't getting the full remaster treatment. It was gonna be part of, like,
yeah.
that collection.
I'm saying 2 is revealed. It's acknowledged, whatever. If it's part of a collection, I think that counts. Because I'm saying that it's 2 is if 2 and 3 come, that doesn't mean 2 didn't come, right? Like it's like I think to me that is one where the way I'm saying it, it covers it either way. And it's not like an either or. I'm not saying it's gonna come as only itself, but it's like I think 2 is gonna get revealed now. We had one last year. We're treading water until 4. We're going to get 2 and 3 at some time, theoretically. Feels like maybe now's the time to talk about it. I think it's probably too early, but also a lot of the other things that I think might happen are.
It could be a filler game though, couldn't it? Like they were saying they need things to fill it up. Why not release Metroid Prime when you've got it in the bank anyway?
I agree. hmm
Okay.
Particularly if you actually are going to say something about Metroid Prime 4 again.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So my next solid one is
And this is your last solid one. We'll get you
my last
risky
solid one.
after that.
Yeah. There will be at least one cloud game revealed for Switch.
Okay.
Now that's not necessarily like when I say revealed, it's not like a new game. Could be like we're
Yeah,
bringing
just
Alan
a
Wake
cloud
2.
version of a
Yeah.
game will come to Switch. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
with you. I think that's totally reasonable. Okay. So now I'm in the point of like which other of these predictions that like I've seen, like what are these rumors should I try to
Mhm.
pretend is real? Okay. I'm going to say okay. I'm going to say that Fire Emblem 4 remake is revealed.
Okay.
That's one of the rumors that Sierra and I talked about last week. It's kind of been there's been smoke around that for a minute that they were remaking that game. It would kind of make sense, I think, based on the trajectory of Fire Emblem, right? Like over the last couple generations, like we had Awakening on 3DS, and then they did the Fire Emblem 2 remakes as kind of like the last big Fire Emblem game on 3DS. So the idea that they could go, we had Three Houses, that was the big release on Switch. Then we did the one that I played
Engage.
last year, Engage. Thank you. That was for the anniversary, right? That was like a smaller, more throwback one. Then we get a remake that is like a proper new game, but it's a remake of an old game. And then next generation, we get the successor to Three Houses, right? The next new Fire Emblem. Um, not crazy to think that they would follow that trajectory, right? Given what we've seen them do in the past.
Okay, so my risky pick. I've got a few options. I'll walk you through them.
Hit
So
me.
one was Hi-Fi Rush will be shadow dropped, but I don't think it's necessarily risky enough. I could see that easily happening.
Yeah, I think that's not risky enough, but I think
Mhm.
it's a good prediction, though. I think that's probably right.
Two, Phil Spencer makes an appearance, talks about like the partnership between Nintendo and this that, and the
Game
other.
Pass coming to Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, I don't think it's coming, but I could see that they talk about like some kind of partnership, talking about maybe that if Call of Duty's there, talk about how Activision and Microsoft love Nintendo, blah blah blah.
Sure.
Um, and I could have seen Diablo 4 coming. to Switch. Um, a new 3D Mario announced was another one, but the one I'm going to go with is Metroid Prime 4 is not here, but there is a new 2D Metroid revealed.
Oh, I like that. That's interesting. Like Metroid 5, right? Or whatever, right?
No, it'd
What
be
is
6. Dread was 5, so
Red
it
was
should be
5.
Metroid
Okay.
6. Yeah.
I like that. I hope that's true. I don't know how realistic that is, but I hope you're right. Cause like fuck, I would love for them to be like, yeah, Dread 2 or whatever, right? It's like,
Hmm.
oh, great. More. Give me more Mercury Storm, baby. Okay. So my okay, here's mine. I had 2. One of them is another one of the, rumored things that I don't know if I think is real, but I want it to be real, which is that Grezzo, who did the Link's Awakening remaster or remake rather, are working on the Oracle games, like Oracle of Ages and Seasons, and that they
Oh, okay. I think you were going to say Earthbound.
well, I'm gonna. This is the one I'm not gonna do. 'Cause I think I really want this to be true. I think it's a natural next step for them after Link's Awakening is to do the other or the Game Boy Color games that are, like, in that style.
Hmm.
Originally, when they came out, there was 2 versions, and there was a rumor that there was going to be a 3rd version that never came out. I wouldn't be surprised if they named it that, and they kinda tried to bring the disparate parts of those games, like, into one collection of some kind. I don't know how you do that because they are pretty different, but we'll see. I hope this is true. I would love to see those games get remade. I would love to see Grezzo do this. That said, we know Grezzo is working on a project that's an original IP that's not a Zelda game. I don't know if Grezzo is a big enough team to have multiple projects at a time like that. So to me, like betting on that being real, I just don't know, right? And it feels like
That's why it's
risky.
risky. That's why it's risky.
Yeah, it feels risky to me in potentially a bad way. So I'm gonna say I don't want to do that one unless you think my next one is not risky enough. Because
Okay.
I think it's debatable. My risky pick is that I don't think that Nintendo acknowledges Earthbound's anniversary. I think that could really go either way. I think them not acknowledging it is like, well, that's par for the course. They never acknowledge it. And I think there's been so much conversation of like, surely they will acknowledge it now, right?
So my issue with that is that Earthbound didn't release until August. So I think saying that
Fair.
in January is tough because,
It's
like, they
2
might acknowledge it in
later
August.
this year. That's a good
Yeah.
point. If it was like a for the year thing, that would maybe be okay,
Yes, yeah.
I'll go with Grezzo then. I'll do that Grezzo is working on an Oracle series remake because I don't really think that's happening. Or if it is, I don't think it's close enough that you talk about it is I think where I'm at with it.
Okay. I'm happy with that.
Cool. Okay, so let's go through them real quick. So for me, I've got Nintendo Switch 2 will not be revealed. Luigi's Mansion 2 will get a release date. Donkey Kong Country, a new Donkey Kong Country game will be revealed. Metroid Prime 2 remastered will be revealed. Fire Emblem 4 remake will be revealed. And Grezzo is working on an Oracle series remake, is my risky pick.
So for me, Hi-Fi Rush is announced for Nintendo Switch. Paper Mario Thousand Year Door gets a release date. Information about the new Mario Park in Florida. Sega will show footage of a game for the first time. There will be at least one cloud game revealed. And then my risky pick, Metroid Prime 4 is not here, but there's a new 2D Metroid announced.
I love it. I hope half of these things are real because it'll be a banger of a direct if that's the case.
Imagine if they're all correct. Like the whole board just goes green.
I love it. I'd love that. I'd love
Everyone's
to
gonna
have
think
a tie.
we're like those insider leakers that are like, gotta tune into Nintendo knows every week. These guys know.
And it's like it'd be great because like we don't have it's no sources. We just know. You know, we just read the tea leaves,
Mhm.
man. Read the piranha plant leaves. Which, you know, just comes to us. Anyway, if you guys want to let us know what you think we're going to see at the next Nintendo Direct, make sure you write into the show. You can do that by heading over to flipscreen.games, or you can get in touch with us via email. You can join our Discord and keep the conversation rolling between episodes. However you choose to get involved, I'd really love to hear what games you want to see, what games you think are realistic, right? That can give us the same vibe. What are your realistic predictions? What are your risky picks? What are your pie in the sky? If it comes to pass, you'll do a backflip type predictions because I like hearing those too. And of course, go check out Flip Screen Games podcast. If you didn't check out 2024's predictions episode, what episode was that, Steve?
122.
122. Go check that one out. It was a great time, and it'll keep the predictions, hype moving for you after
Can't
this
believe
week's
that was
show.
only 4 weeks ago. Like, it feels like a century ago. This
This year,
year's
man,
going so slowly.
it's been wild. It's been
It's
wild.
creeping.
I feel like I've lived like a year in this past 6 months.
Mhm.
Anyway, thank you guys for tuning into the show. Thank you for being a supporter. Thank you for being a member of the community. However you choose to get involved or show your support, we thank you for tuning into another episode of Nintendo Noise. For the crew, I've been Pete. He's been Steve. We'll see you next week.